The comparative questions can sometimes seem difficult because these authors say a lot of different stuff. But we always want to just try to boil it down as simply as we can to the dumb summary version and just start there and not worry about the specifics until we need to. So how do the two authors see the issue? Now, this question is interesting because it's asking, like, what would they agree on? But if we did all the other questions, we would hopefully have realized that they do not agree, right? This is a debate almost. And so we can also get that a little bit from the blurb, which we should always read. Passage 1 is adapted from Alexis de Tocqueville, Democracy in America, Volume 2, originally published in 1840. That doesn't tell us much. Passage 2 is adapted from Harriet Taylor Mill, Enfranchisement of Women. So that kind of summarizes it for us. Originally published in 1851. As the United States and European societies grew increasingly democratic, during the 19th century, debates arose about whether freedoms enjoyed by men should be extended to women as well. So it's about, enfranchisement of women. So even though they don't say that about passage 1, we should have gotten that from having done all the other questions about passage 1. And so what does de Tocqueville think? So let me write it here. Passage 1 is, let's say, gender equality bad, right? He's against it. And then passage 2, much more obviously, I think, is saying gender equality is good. So they disagree. So we want to kind of ask a weird question then. If they disagree, then what would they agree on? Well, normally when they ask this question in the SAT, this is a hard way to phrase this, but what happens with these passages is the two people agree on the problem and disagree about the solution. Okay? So I know that phrasing is a little controversial. They agree on the problem. In this case, the problem is that women are becoming equal. I know that that's an old-timey way of phrasing it, but bear with me here, right? It makes sense. Like in the 1800s, that would have been to some people as a problem, and so that's the thing, is they agree that women are becoming more equal. And then they disagree on the solution, right? De Tocqueville says, well, we got to stop this, or this is bad. And Mill is saying, no, this is good. This is a good thing for society. So they agree on the problem, but they disagree on the solution. So that's kind of what we're trying to capture in the answer choice here. So look at choice A. It's part of a broad social shift toward greater equality. So that's the problem, according to both of them, right, is that society is changing. And that's also the problem according to the blurb, right? Originally published in 1851, as the United States and European societies grew increasingly democratic during the 19th century, debates arose about whether freedoms enjoyed by men should be extended to women as well. De Tocqueville says no, Mill says yes. There's your disagreement, but they agree on the starting point, that things are becoming more democratic. So I know my phrasing is a little weird here, but I really think that normally that's the way we phrase it. Like the problem is something like slavery, or the problem is something like the nature of government, and then they disagree on the solution. Here, the problem is something that we wouldn't see as a problem, but the framing works. And then let's look at the other choices here. B, unlikely to provide benefits that outweigh their costs. Well, I would think that passage 1 agrees with that, right? That gender equality isn't good because the costs are going to be greater than the benefits. But passage 2 would say the opposite, that it is good and we should do it. C, inevitable given the economic advantages of gender equality. Well, inevitable maybe is actually an okay word, even though it's kind of strong, but economics are not really the issue here, right? It's not really doing costs and prices and things like that. It's just not really the topic. And then D, at odds with the principles of American democracy. Well, honestly, I think both of them would disagree with that. But especially passage 2 would disagree with that. I'm phrasing this weird. So passage 1 might agree that inequality is bad because it's bad for democracy, but passage 2 certainly doesn't think so. She thinks it's fully in line with what America should stand for. So they don't agree on the solution, and I think choices B and D are kind of getting at the solution. But choice A, so to speak, is agreeing on the problem, on the change that's happening. And so this is a weird way of describing this, but I really want to stick to this phrasing of problem solution, because I think it works for most of the other passages, and in those cases it will be much more obvious that like the thing that they're agreeing on is that there's some sort of problem, and then they'll disagree on the solution. So just kind of remember that, even if in here it's a little bit of a stretch. But remember, in the 1800s, like most people would have seen like women having any rights as a problem. So we're always trying to look at these historical passages with that historical perspective. You are very often going to have to answer questions that you would vehemently disagree with, and you just need to be okay with that, right? That people even 100 years ago had very different views than we do today, and we're always trying to answer with their views in mind and not trying to let our own influence our choices.